Hey guys, my name is Reagan. I have been licensed since 2006. I made this video more as a collection of the things that I have learned. So this video is more for if you are just graduating cosmetology school or you don't have very much experience, or if you're just a regular person wanting to color their hair and want to get the lay of the land. This will be kind of said in more of a layman's terms so that everybody can kind of understand it. So if you're more advanced, this video may not be as interesting to you. Here are some of the things that we will be going over. So first and foremost, color wheel. This is probably the most important thing that you can take away today. Which also deals with the contributing factors in the hair at every level. I will also go over developers that I have found that work the best in every situation, and in general, the things and quirks of hair that I have learned that will keep you from praying to the color gods. Here are some things that I think would be important. On the top left, we have a level finder, which shows you levels 1 to 10. On the very parallel opposite side of it are the same levels, but without the neutral base added to it. So this is what would happen if you were to bleach from one level to the end, all the stages that you would go through before getting to your desired level. This is also helpful for figuring out the contributing pigment and how to get rid of it, which is what the top right image is. Obviously, we all know that violet cancels out yellow because every person who's ever bleached their hair at home knows that they usually use a violet toner or a purple shampoo to kind of get rid of the brassiness. But as you get darker and darker, you go away from the violet into the blue and then finally to the green to get rid of the red. You should be comfortable with the color wheel. So let me just explain the basics. What you're going to do is go across from the color you have to find what would cancel out. And essentially, when you cancel things out, it becomes a neutral / brown. But if it's a lighter canceling out, then it's going to be just your more platinum kind of colors. All right, here are some things that you should be aware of, and this pertains only really to color because lightener has its own set of rules. Color does not lift color. There are a few that can, and they generally work from adding extra developer, which creates the oxidation reaction of the lifting process. They are So Red from Matrix, and then Sally's also has one, I think from L'Oreal, that comes in like copper and red, and it says for dark hair or brunettes, and it's a red and black box. But if we were saying virgin hair, which means never been colored, if you are at this starting level of like between a 4 and a 5, the most realistically that you can expect to lift with a color is 4 levels. So if you're at a level 4, it would bring you up to an 8. If you're at a 5, bring you up to a 9. And that's the best kind of incidence because that's not always the case, and I'll show you why it doesn't in the future slide. But if you're just doing a dye, you probably will end up with the middle result if you're starting at this starting level. With lightener, you can go all the way to 10 or even 11, but I will show you, explain what developers, what to be careful of, all of that. And this video is more going over formulation. If you would like to see a video more on application, then let me know and I will upload a video for that for you. Okay, developers. Here's what I want you guys to think of when you are formulating a color. Where you are, meaning what level you're starting with, your contributing pigment, and then where you need to be. And so that will help you decide what developer to use. And then we'll go over the actual tones that you should be using in the next slide. So if you're just toning, or you're only wanting to lift one level, or you're doing just a deposit only demi, like the color sync from Matrix, then you'd use 10 volume. 20 is basically the one that you're going to use for most everything. It lifts up to 2 levels. Um, this one is most of the time used for lightener on the scalp because anything higher than that can cause irritation, and I would not recommend using it. You can even use it for lightening off the scalp. In fact, it is actually better to use a lower developer because it continues to work, although it does take longer. You won't get as much brassiness because you are lifting slowly. So it reduces damage, reduces brassiness. It just takes longer. That's the downside. So, for those of you who want to quicken the process, you can use a 30 volume, but only off the scalp. So, when you're applying, about an inch or so away from the scalp, because your scalp has heat, so it will amplify. So, you would apply the 30 volume about an inch or so away from the scalp, and then later on go back in with the 20 to do the scalp once the ends of your hair are sufficiently blonde or the sufficient color you want, because this, the lightener on the scalp will actually go a lot quicker. And that's just for lightener. That is not for color. So 40 volume I almost never use, but it is helpful if you're lifting 4 levels, if you're using a high lift tint, which also requires double the developer to the cream that you're using. You can use it in cases of off the scalp lightening, but I put a warning because it is extremely damaging. You have to have very healthy hair. Otherwise, you will get breakage because you're bringing it up extremely fast. So it's essentially what happens when you put lightener on your hair. There are color molecules in your hair. When you put the lightener on, it opens the shaft of the hair, goes inside, and then it breaks up all those little color molecules. Now, if you do it slowly, it can time to adjust and doesn't quite disrupt the pH in your hair as much. But if you use 40, it goes in there with reckless abandon and essentially has more damage and more brassiness. But I understand some people are in a hurry, so if you are going to use a 40 volume, just be careful, and only if you are a hairstylist and are comfortable with the developers. All right, here we are going to go over toners, and I will also do a short explanation on tints that you may be formulating. So, I really love the Manic Panic Virgin Snow toner. The reason why is that even if your hair is over porous from bleaching or just damage, it tends to yield the best results in terms of hair that is a little bit more, should we say, experienced in terms of chemicals. So I feel like it's number one, it's the safest. It can go on basically any hair, provided your hair is lifted to the right tone, which is the biggest mistake people make. The Virgin Snow, like the T18, will only tone if your hair is at like a 10 or higher. And so that would be like the inside of a banana for the level 10. I also included Color Sync. Color Sync is probably my favorite toner. It's got a fairly pleasant smell. You can yield the most results that can be predictable. I myself have never used T18. But I know that a lot of people tend to throw T18 on over any level thinking it's a fix-all, but it only works if your hair is sufficiently blonde enough. Now, toners are not just for blonde hair. They can be used for essentially anything. Let's say you were doing a red and it was too red now. Then you could go back in with a gold of the level that you're trying to achieve to kind of cancel out some of the red, but not completely. So you get more of a natural, like strawberry-ish blonde type deal, depending on the level you're at. You could also use an ash if it's a darker color to combat any red if you have a client who hates red. So it really just depends where you're trying to be at, and list your questions down below. I will be responding to them as much as I can. And then any other questions or video related topics, let me know. For color, this is also helpful too. So I have found that if you're going darker from blonde to a dark color, even if they say they want ash, do not put direct ash right on the blonde hair at a darker level. If it's at that level or lighter by half a shade, then yeah, it's fine to put a little ash in there. But if you're tinting darker, don't put direct ash. It will turn out like greenish gray. So you need a neutral base in there. For regular color, it's the same deal. You're going to need to look at the contributing factors, go over your color wheel, and just add what you think you need. For instance, you want brown, they're red. Put neutral and ash together. So just go ahead and look at the color wheel to figure out what you need to do, and send me a comment or a message and I can help with any further questions. All right, here are the special rules for hair, the times when it doesn't really go by what it should. So, when mixing, thick and thin hair have their own special rules. Thick hair, if you remember back, I said that 10 volume lifts 1, 20 lifts 2, 30 lifts 3, 40 lifts 4. And this is a general guideline. Each color line will have its own quirks. But thick hair will not lift as high with a 40 as thin hair will. So with 10, you might get like a half a level or maybe even one. It depends also on the dryness and the porousness of the hair. So you can lift a lot higher in shorter time with thinner hair than with thicker. So that you should also keep that into perspective when picking your developer. Previously colored hair. This is more of the color won't lift color type thing. So if you have brown box dye and you try and throw like a level 10 with 40 volume over the top, you might get a little bit of lightening, but not much. And honestly, it will honestly just turn red. And then your roots, the ones that haven't been colored, will process as normal. So you'll end up with like this skunk kind of effect. So severely dry and damaged hair. If it's overly porous, it will not accept color. It might deposit that day, but as soon as you go to rinse it out, most of it's going to come out. You aren't going to get favorable results because there's nothing inside the hair for the color to adhere to. So with that, you use sparingly. You're going to need to talk them into conditioning treatments and all that because you just aren't going to get the most favorable results. And you need to be honest with your client. When you know that their hair has been through the ringer, do not promise the moon because it just won't happen. It's better to be honest with your clients and have your results be improved upon what you said than to say, oh yeah, that'll be great, and then it looks bad and then you get a complaint. So just be honest. That's the best thing. I have found that, however, if you're in a state where there's a lot of swimming going on, that the chlorine attaching to the hair does tend to lighten it. And I have found that if you're doing like a fashion color, like a pink or something like that, it actually makes it adhere just a little bit better because the hair is so dry. But that is the only case in which I have found that chlorine helps in any aspect of dyeing. And I generally probably wouldn't recommend coloring chlorine damaged hair. You need to recommend the client use a swimmer shampoo, like Paul Mitchell has one called Shampoo 3. You would put the soap on, put a cap on, let the heat from your head kind of warm up the product so that it can be rinsed out, which will be followed up by a mask because it does tend to damage the hair because it is stripping all the chlorine out along with the natural oils. So this has been Reagan, and let me know what you would like to see on the next video. I tried to keep this as short as possible with the most information. There probably will be a part 2 because there's a lot to unpack here.